Hello, Keith Rucker here at VintageMachinery.org. Guys, today I'm glad to show you a new addition for my Kearney Trecker Model 3H horizontal milling machine. Now, if you guys follow my channel regularly, you know I recently picked up this new milling machine. I upgraded from a smaller 2H mill to this larger 3H mill. And when I got this mill, I did not have a universal head or a vertical head attachment like I did with my previous mill, and they're not compatible. As you get up in larger mills, they do not, the ones from the smaller mills don't fit the bigger mills. So I was in the search for a universal head, and I am happy to say that mainly through many of you guys out there helping me in my search and helping me find some of these things, I actually found several universal heads that would fit a 3H, and I ended up settling on this one right here. I say universal heads, a couple of them were just vertical heads. I was really looking for this particular model right here, which is the universal head. It rotates in multiple directions. I'll show you a little bit more about that in a minute, versus one that just turns on one axis, which is considered more a vertical head. So story on this one is I found it up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, right where K&T made their stuff at. And I found it on a Facebook Marketplace ad that a viewer shared with me from his area. I got in touch with the person who was selling it, and it really turned out to be a quite enjoyable experience because I asked the guy, I said, hey, just give me a call. I want to talk to you about this vertical head, had a couple of questions about it. Got the guy on the phone. Turns out the guy that I purchased this from, a gentleman named Ronald Grundy, worked for K&T for 30 years. He went to work for K&T in 1961, right after he got out of the Navy, and he spent 30 years working as a machine builder and rebuilder for K&T. In fact, he told me that toward the end of his career at K&T, that he was in charge of the entire department that did machine rebuilding. So this guy and myself had a lot in common. When he went to work for K&T in 1961, he was basically hired as a scraping hand to go in there and hand scrape machines. So he spent his whole life doing machine rebuilding. He has turned out to be an extremely valuable resource to me already. But I had a conversation with him, and he told me that this was a head that he had picked up somewhere along the way, and the two of us were able to work out a deal. And this past weekend, I actually made a trip up to Milwaukee and picked this up, and had a couple other places I was visiting while I was up there related to some vintage machinery type stuff. But main reason for going was to get this head. I'm going to zoom you in here, show you a little bit about it. My goal here today is I want to get it mounted on the machine and just test it out, make sure everything's working right. I feel pretty confident that it is. I was fortunate that it came with the proper drive gear. When I bought my milling machine, it had a drive gear that came with it. However, it was not the right gear for this particular head. I'm not exactly sure what that gear that I had fit. I feel pretty confident it fit some model, one of the models of the heads that you could put on here. But K&T offered about a half a dozen different options for these heads, and they all took different drive gears depending on the configuration. So the one I had wasn't right, but I was able to get the proper drive gear here. Let's zoom in here and show it to you. So let's start out by looking at the back side of this. And I need to clean this up a little bit before we put it on the machine, but you got two holes up here that fit up onto the overarm supports. That's what really kind of holds this thing in place and helps get it properly aligned. There's also a couple of dovetail clamps here that clamp onto the dovetail on the back of the mill here, and that again just kind of holds and clamps it in place, holds it in place. And this area here is where the drive gear goes up into to drive this. And you basically have a gear that's mounted to a 50 taper that fits up in the spindle of the machine. You got the drive dogs that drive that, and the spinning of the horizontal spindle is basically what powers this head. Now on the front side, the cool thing about this particular model head, this universal head, is that it rotates in two axes. So it will spin around 360 degrees in this direction, and it'll also spin 360 degrees in this direction as well. So with this head, you can basically get a cutter angled in whatever angle you want to. It's really a cool setup for doing compound angles. I'm looking forward to it because I need to do some milling at 45 degrees. I could do it over on my vertical mill, just tilt the head back, but this is going to really work out a lot better. Now the spindle in the universal head here, instead of being 50 taper, like what fits onto the horizontal milling machine, this one takes a 40 taper, so a little bit smaller taper. There's an example of a 40 taper cutter that fits up inside the spindle here, and you can see it's a smaller spindle than the 50 taper. The 40 taper is used a lot today. This one here is actually a Cat 40 rather than a NNTB, which has a little bit different setup. You can use these on this head, but the NMTB setup they are just a little bit different, mainly with the drawbar, but these work just fine. So one thing that I will say that I am kind of on the lookout for now is what's called a parking attachment that mounts onto the mill, and basically what it is a little crane that this thing hangs on. You can take it off and just kind of let it sit over to the side, and then when you get ready, you just kind of move it around, so you don't have to come in here with a gantry, or in this case, I got an engine hoist picking this thing up. This head is extremely heavy. It's not just something you're going to go do a bear hug on and mount it on the machine. You really need some help. So K&T had what they call these parking attachments, and like I said, they mounted on the side. There were two bosses that came out that this would fit up on, and there was a little jib crane type thing that allowed you to move it around. Those were often sold on universal mills when they sold them with a universal head of some type. My machine, even though it is a universal model, did not have a parking attachment on it. So if anybody knows of a parking attachment, a K&T parking attachment that will work on this Model 3H, I would greatly like to know about it. A 2K, it's the same parking attachment that fits on a 2K as well. So let me know. Worst case, I could probably build one, but it is to make it like the original, it's a fairly complicated thing to do on your own. It'd be a lot easier if I could just find one. So let you guys be on the lookout for that. Maybe you can help me find one. So let's start out by mounting the drive gear, and it's going to go up in this 50 taper spindle. I always like to wipe those out, just make sure there's no trash or anything in there. And again, there's holes in the back of this gear that mount up on these drive dogs, and that fits right in there. There's a drawbar that pulls that in. Once this is on here, I will just note real quick that it also has some holes here that are tapped holes that go through the spindle where you can bolt this to the spindle. It takes a 9/16 12 cap screw. I don't have some in hand. I need to get some ordered, but normally you put those in there. For just a quick demo here, we're not going to run this thing very long. I'm not going to worry about putting those in there, but normally you would bolt that on as well. Next step is I want to get this on the overarm supports, mounted up there where it's just kind of hanging on there. I need to raise things up just a little bit, get it lined up. This is a nice thing if you have a parking attachment is that it's just kind of at the right height and just goes right on there. I'd say I need to loosen those up. Let me grab a wrench. All right, we're all the way up on the supports now. All right, got those tightened back up on top. Now this head is locked onto the overarm support, so it's going to be properly aligned whenever I pull it back in there. We may have to get the gears meshed up, but it should be properly aligned. Next thing I want to do is loosen up these bolts. These dovetail pieces kind of slide out to the side, so you can move it back, and then they'll clamp in behind it on the back side. I am going to get this engine hoist out of the way. All right, so I'm just going to slide this out. Say I am. I think there's a groove in there. You got to get it out, loosen it up where it gets past that notch that's in the back side of it. Yep, there it comes. Stay out of the way. I need to do the same thing to the other side here. All right, next I'm just going to use my lever over here on the side to pull the overarm supports in. Now when that gear hits, we got to get that gear to mesh, so I'm just going to use a wrench back here on the back on my drawbar where I can kind of manipulate the position of that gear, and there it goes. Thought I had these moved out, but I guess I didn't have them done right. Let's see, get them. I'm going to pull my head in, and right there the gear's not meshing, so I've just got a wrench. I'm going to rotate the spindle, which will rotate that gear a little bit, and we'll get those gears meshed up. Well, guys, a little bit of a setback here. I've been messing with this thing off camera for a little while and trying to figure out what's going on. So I've pulled the head back on there. I've got my gears meshed up, and we got good news and we got bad news. The bad news is that it's not going all the way back on there. You see there's about a 1/2 inch gap between there. That should be up tight against the column, but there's a gap in there. So I've been doing a little bit of research. I called and talked to my friend up in Milwaukee that I got this from that used to work for K&T. He has talked to some people that he knows that they still have a bunch of K&T resources, and it turns out that this drive gear right here is not the correct gear for this head. That drive gear is for a heavy duty head rather than this high-speed universal head. So that's the bad news. The good news is that it is the correct pitch. It is the correct number of teeth. It's the correct diameter. In other words, this gear meshes with the head. I can run the head. In fact, I did. I turned it on, and everything's running. I just can't pull it all in tight. So I'm thinking, and I'm doing some more research right now, trying to figure out. I think that we can basically make this gear thinner, and it's going to be fine. I'm trying to get some specs on the correct gear right now to see if there's anything else that needs to happen. But just doing some quick measuring, if I basically take about a 1/2 inch off the thickness of this gear, it's going to more or less be the same thickness as the gear that's in the head, and it will allow that thing to go up on there. So before I do anything, I'm doing a little bit more research. I've got a friend who has this same head for the same size machine, and he's got the correct gear. I've sent him a message. He's going to be, when he gets home later this evening, he's going to look at his gear, give me some pictures and dimensions. Ron up in Milwaukee is trying to see if he can locate a drawing for the correct gear and see if it's possible for us to modify this gear to make it where it will work. And I think that will work, but I'm just not quite ready to say for sure. So we're going to put the video on pause right now, and I'll be back hopefully soon with a word on what we're going to try to do. Well, guys, I think the time has come that we're just going to back up and punt here for a minute to get out of this corner that we're in and come up with a game plan. So I'm not going to do anything else on this today, but let me kind of share a couple of things that I've learned since I shut the camera off a while ago, and I've been doing a little bit of research. So I talked with Mr. Grundy up in Minneapolis, and like I said, he used to work for K&T. He actually still has a lot of documentation from the company, and he was able to do a little bit of digging, Found out that this gear does fit a K&T drive, or a head. I think I said this a while ago, it fits a heavy duty head though. It's the same pitch, it's the same diameter, it's the same number of teeth. In other words, the gear part is right. It's too thick, and it's actually a little bit, some other little issues going on as well. So got a couple options. Well, number one, he actually found a blueprint on this, and he's getting a copy of that made and sent down to me. He's going to get it scanned and sent down to me. So I will have a blueprint of what the gear is supposed to be like. I got just a picture of it on my phone a while ago, of that he took of the blueprint, and I already know that basically the difference is that the gear that goes on here is actually recessed in the back so that it actually goes up over the spindle in the back by, I can't remember how much, 1/4 of an inch, something like that. It's not a whole lot. And then the gear is also thinner than this gear. And then I think it's machined down the front, and there's a spacer that goes on the front and some other things. That's probably not terribly important. But bottom line is that by doing that, it moves this whole gear back and makes it thinner in the front, which allows the head to go all the way up on there. So what are my options? Option number one, and probably what I'm going to start with, is let me see if I can find the right gear. He doesn't have one. He's already checked his inventory. He said he probably had one at one time, but it's been sold, whatever. So, I'm going to have to look for other sources. Maybe some of you guys out there know where there's a orphan drive gear that will fit this. If I can find one, I'll probably just pony up. I'll buy the right gear for it, and then I can turn around and sell this one to the guy that's looking for this gear, because everybody, maybe not everybody, but a lot of people that have these universal heads have the problem that they got the head, but they don't have the drive gear. The drive gears are often separated from the heads at auctions and sales and whatever. They sell the machine, they know the head goes with it, but they don't realize that the drive gear goes with it, and it's over in a pile somewhere else, and they get separated, they get lost. So somebody out there is looking for this gear, I guarantee it. So, option number one is, if I can find the right gear, I just basically buy the new gear, sell this one, everything's even, all's good. If I cannot find this gear, what I'll probably do is modify this gear. And the issue that I got with modifying it is this gear is extremely hard. I checked it over there with my hardness tester. It's about Rockwell 60 on the C scale, which is really hard. You're not going to just go put this on the lathe and start machining it. I suppose you could hard turn it with the right inserts and what have you, but even then, it's not going to be an easy piece to machine. Particularly trying to put that recess in the back. Can I do it? Yeah, I think I can do it if I have to. As far as the thickness, I can put it on the surface grinder. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of grinding, but we could probably grind that down. That recess in the back is going to be a little bit more of a challenge. Honestly, I could probably do without the recess. It's only moving the gear back about 1/4 of an inch. Even if I don't have 100% engagement of this gear up between the two pieces, no more than I'm going to use this thing for the occasional, it's not like I'm going to set this thing up and run a production job and the machine's going to run for 10 years straight, making the same part over and over again. It would be more than adequate if I just, cut a 1/2 inch off the front of this. I'd really only be losing about 1/8 of an inch in actual engagement, according to the quick math that I did. So, that's an option. But ideally, I'd like to find the right gear. So I think that's what we're going to do, is see if we can do it. Fortunately for me, I'm not sitting here waiting to use this head on a job. I do have a couple of jobs that I want to use it on coming up in the future, but those jobs aren't sitting in front of me right now. So I've got a little bit of time. So we're going to just take this thing slow and easy and see what we can do. I know somebody's going to ask, why don't you just make a new gear? And yes, that is an option, but this is a spiral gear. They're extremely complicated to make. Technically, I could make one on this milling machine, but I would have to have a leads attachment to cause the dividing head to rotate while you're cutting that. They're extremely complicated to do. And if I did that, I'd probably have to make a pair of them so that they would match, because this gear wasn't made on a mill machine like this. It would probably made on either a gear shaper or a gear hobbing machine. So the profiles, I would have to make a pair for them to work. Just trust me, to make them mesh properly, I guess I should say. Or, you know, I could get up with my buddy up there that makes gears at American Machine and Gear Company, and he could probably make me one. But it would cost a pretty penny. It'd be expensive to have him set up just to make one of these gears. So probably going to try to avoid that unless I just absolutely have to. So anyway, that's where we're at. A little bit disappointed. I was looking forward to firing this thing up and running it today. But we're going to have to wait and be patient, and hopefully we can find the right piece. And if not, you guys will get to see me do a crazy project and try to modify this one. Either way, we're going to get it to work. So that's where we're at. So one other thing I will mention before we shut down is as soon as I had the problem, I called the guy that I bought this from, Ron, up in Milwaukee, told him what was going on. And he was extremely apologetic. You know, he told me right up front that, you know, there's about 1 million combinations of these gears between the gears and the heads and everything else. And he did the math. He knew it was the right pitch. He really thought this was the right gear. It wasn't until he really dug into things that he was able to figure out that it wasn't the right gear. Ron offered to refund my money on this, let him send this back up there to him. He said, look, I'll take it back. You know, I don't want you to be out. So I said, no, I don't want to do that, because I do believe I can get this thing to work. It's going to cost me a little bit of time and headache, but hey, you know, this is the head I want, and I'm tickled to have it in the shop, and we're gonna make it work, because this is the head I want. So that's kind of where we're at. And with that, guys, again, if anybody knows of a parking attachment, I'm still interested in one of those. But other than that, I think we're going to wrap this one up for today. And unfortunately, not going to get to see the head run. But that will be a wrap. As always, thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you like. Those comments are appreciated, as are those thumbs up. Hit that bell icon so that you get notifications when new videos are posted. And guys, we will catch you on the next video. And as always, thanks for watching.